Hello and welcome to another episode of the Auto Guide Show. Today I drive a really cool sports car. Kyle drives a really cool sports car. He also drives a big SUV. And we have a bit of news from around the industry. So we'll get right to it and look at the reviews and features. All right, so we'll kick things off with a first drive. It's nice. We have a first drive almost every week here, so something new. So you drove the Explorer that doesn't look all that different, but it is. So what's different?
Yeah, right. It doesn't look different when you first look at it, and then you put it beside the previous one. You're like, oh yeah, no, those are fairly noticeable changes. It's weird. It plays a trick with you.
Super.
Yeah. So 25 Explorer. It is new in the sense that, well, I mean, a lot of it is new. New looks, new infotainment, simplified lineup, and simplified engine range, because I think just before this facelift, the hybrid is gone for everyone except law enforcement. So you have the 2.3 liter inline 4 turbo and then the 3 liter V6. And I wasn't a big fan of the Explorer before. I'll just admit it. I think it has a niche in the market because it's a mid-size 3-row, but it's rear drive based, and that's pretty rare in the non-premium section. And so hypothetically, it should be really good at towing. It's capped at
a tower, right? It's like a mini Suburban almost.
Well, but it's capped at the same 5,000 pounds that you can find in a lot of other vehicles in the category. But I imagine it does it easier. We didn't tow.
It's it depends on the vehicle and the all-wheel drive system and all this and that. But yes, it should tow better because the majority of the power's on the rear wheels that have way more weight on them, and it just better balances it. But I mean, like, I don't know.
Yeah. So drove it around the local head office, which was interesting because we got to use Blue Cruise, and it is a new version of Blue Cruise. It is pretty good. I still think Super Cruise is the better one, just because the light in the steering wheel, right? It makes it so easy to understand exactly what the system's doing, whereas Blue Cruise is just a little icon in the instrument cluster. But it does a good job changing lanes when you signal and making sure there's a clear spot. Also, if you're passing an 18-wheeler, it will actually move slightly further away from it in its lane, which is really clever. That's good. The new infotainment is largely great. It is the new Ford digital experience, so it's easier to use than previous syncs. And the one thing that Ford, I don't think, talks about enough with this update, but is worth pointing out to potential buyers, the transmission is better. There's been a lot of tweaking of the 10-speed, and it is far less hunty than it used to be.
Yeah, well, I mean, I just talked about that recently with the Ranger Raptor, right? That's 10-speed. Yeah. And I mean, we complain about it on the old Mustang too. And it's funny you say that, because I feel like we keep saying that, not Ford specifically. Like, everyone seems to be focusing on transmissions right now. Like, they seem so much better in the last year or two than they were. I don't know why.
Yeah. So the last Explorer I drove was the 4-cylinder, and it felt very confused, the gearbox, and this one was much better. And also the brakes weren't very good on the previous one. For whatever reason, I felt a lot more confident with this one. I don't know if
were these STs or Lemons?
No, I drove the Active, which is the new base trim.
Okay, because I was gonna say maybe it was smaller brakes because of the 4-cylinder, and these ones get bigger for towing, but you drove equal versions.
Yeah, I did also drive the Platinum with the 3-liter V6, and it's good. And like, that's the other advantage that the Explorer has, right? Is you can get a higher trim with more power than a lot of the other options in this category. So it's good. I just still think it's too expensive. Like, the ST gets very pricey.
So there's the 4-cylinder and the 3-liter turbo, and then does the ST have more power, or is it the Limited and the ST share the power plant now?
Shared power plant.
Okay.
So 400 horsepower in either of them. Yeah.
There's a lot. Your point about the price is interesting, because I never drove the pre-facelift, I guess we'd call it, Explorer, like, since it went rear drive. But I remember the previous one, I drove the last 2 gens a lot in different versions and trims, and I always felt there's a perception that it was slightly larger, even though that isn't inside.
No.
But it always felt slightly more premium. Like, to me, it felt sort of like the almost like it was between a Durango and a Grand Cherokee. Like it wasn't really a Highlander pilot type vehicle. I mean, it wasn't for me, but I could see why someone would be like, I'm getting my Explorer. But I think that's where they've always played. And then it's a Ford. So of course you can wander into a dealership and get, incentives left and right.
So that's a good point. Is the pre-facelift had a really cheap feeling interior, and I think that's why I really didn't like the idea of how much it cost. This one is
Mhm.
better. It still ends up being more money than something like a Palisade or a Telluride, and we both think those are very good interiors. But if you're getting a Platinum, you're also getting much more power, right? So there's a trade-off. I
Yeah.
don't like that Blue Cruise is a subscription. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll be talking about a car I drove recently in a future one of these episodes, but
Yeah.
we'll get to that later.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I really think like those aren't cross shop. Like I think GM's gone against the Japanese, Korean competitors with their 3 rows, and then Stellantis and Ford's been kind of going after the traditional
Mhm.
truck style buyers. But anyway, we'll move on. Enough about
Yeah.
the Explorer. So we move on to another American car.
Oh,
This
it's basically the same.
Yeah, it's rear drive based, all-wheel drive, same thing. So I drove the Corvette E-Ray, and honestly, I haven't driven a C8. The C8s came out when I was not in this industry. Well, I was, but not in this role. And then the Z06 isn't around yet. I mean, I know it's on sale, but they're selling everything they could make, so good on them. But the C-Ray showed up, and I knew what it was, but I had no idea what it'd be like. And after driving it, I realized like I get it in the Corvette hierarchy, because
Mhm.
I say it in the video in the review. The Corvette, there's always here's our new Corvette, and there's usually a Z51 or something equivalent where if you want more performance and loud exhaust, you buy that. A couple years later, here's a Z06 that's just insane on a track. And then right near the end of the model run for that generation, everything they've learned from the car and from racing, they put all into a ZR1, and it's like, this is how ridiculous this could have been.
Yeah.
And they're doing that with this one. I mean, PR1's like over 1,000 horsepower is going to be insane. But they brought out this E-Ray, and it's crazy because it could be like just an afterthought, but this is the most radical Corvette ever made. It's a hybrid. It's all-wheel drive.
It's mid-engine, all-wheel drive, hybrid, auto-only Corvette. Like, tell someone that 10 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, just 10 years ago. Tell someone that 20 years ago, and they'd be like, they think like doom and gloom. But
yeah.
So having driven it, I was trying to figure out where does it fit, because you have the I want a vet, and this is the cheapest. I mean, that's relative now what they cost, but and then you have I want to track my vet, so you have the Z06, and then it's the I just want the craziest Corvette, ZR1. So this I deemed the street Corvette, because for everyday driving and just having fun on the street, it is the best one. I mean, the all-wheel drive is a no-brainer. If it's raining, if the road surface isn't great, it gets so much more traction. And I mean, it's not a awesome car in the rain. The tires are designed for that. But compared to, say, a Z06 in the rain, you're going to be able to get around a lot more. And I mean, theoretically, you could put winters on this, and if you live in a lighter snow region, you'd be fine too.
Well, but that's like like I've seen 911s winter driven, right? And so like I don't know if people will winter drive their C8, but they hypothetically could.
Yeah, no, they definitely could. And you can get the nose lift feature to help you out getting up things even in the summer. But anyway, the reason I said it was so vet or street is so it's 3,700 pounds, like over 3,700. So it's about 300 to 400 pounds more than other vets, and you can feel it to a degree. But Chevy compensates by putting 345 millimeter rear tires, same as the Z06, because it has a Z06 wide body. So the 345 in the rear is like 40 millimeters bigger than a regular vet, and then the front gets equal tires, and the brakes are carbon ceramic, and they're over 15 inches all around. So you feel the weight and you think, oh, I should take it a little easier, but there's so much mechanical grip and stopping power. And the brakes I didn't really appreciate till someone pulled out in front of me and I hit the brake, and it wasn't like I stopped quick. It was like I stopped. I never had a car that just stopped. Like it felt like I just kept going down the road, but the car hadn't moved. It's insane. So I mean, that's all good, but the real reason it's so good on the street is the hybrid motor. So it has the 8-speed dual clutch, like you said, auto only. And I've never driven the regular one, so I don't know. But I mean, I've never come across a dual clutch that didn't get a little jerky in slow driving, like traffic around town. Because of the electric motor and that instant little thrust, it completely masks that.
Yeah.
It just leaves the line so smooth. And by the time, I mean, it's 160 horsepower up front, which is enough. And by the time the transmission and engine have kind of figured themselves out, it's just a smooth transition. And on the highway, I would put it manually in 8th gear at 60 miles an hour. And if I stomp the accelerator, you would hear the electric motor whirl, and it would like get me up and going, and I'd be like at 80 miles an hour in a couple seconds. Like, so you don't need to downshift to get the power either. There's like more than enough power. Even in the city, same thing. Like, it's very EV like with how much power. Like, it's deceiving how much 160 horsepower can feel like if it has a little assist from the back.
I was driving a BMW recently, and they have that live feed as one of their instrument cluster details, and it shows exactly how much horsepower or torque you're using. And I think that's an excellent point. Is like 160 horsepower on its own is actually quite a lot to get you moving on the highway. Like, people don't realize it, but like, that's a significant jump.
Like, so exactly, like that's a good point, because this is a 495 horsepower engine in the back. So if you're at highway speed, you're probably using like 150 of it. If you downshift and go up like 3,000 RPM, you're probably 300 horsepower. So you've gained 150, 160 horsepower. So that's what it feels like. And yeah, around town on the highway, I don't have to shift as much. In the city, it's so smooth. And then of course there's stealth mode, where before you start the car, you can put it into front wheel drive EV only, which sounds hilarious on a Corvette. And it can go 3 to 4 miles. It speeds up to 45 miles an hour. And if you live in a, let's say, a townhouse complex, a condo, or just your downtown where it's a quiet area, this thing's loud on cold start. You can creep around. I went about 2 miles, no problem. The biggest issue is when you come to a complete stop, there's a little gauge in your head-up display and on the dash that shows how much throttle input you're giving and where the threshold line is that'll turn the engine on. And it's funny, you don't realize how much throttle you use to leave a stop. And it's really hard. You're like, come on. But then once it's going, there's so much power. And then you can fire it up at any point mid-drive. And it's a little rough transitioning to hybrid from pure EV, but it feels like you're one of those hypercars at Le Mans, because it is loud out your back. And if you do it like unsuspectingly around people, they're like, what the heck? It just screams to life. But but for like a couple seconds, it's not connected. So it's interesting.
So overall, it sounds like a much better all-round package. But then I have to ask, what was the price?
Well, it's the thing. It's the same price as the Z06, almost identically. Like, they're so close. So it's the same power almost as the Z06, and it's about the same price. So that was my whole thing. If you're gonna track even semi-regularly, okay, Z06, and it sounds way better. But if you're never planning to go to the track, or you might go once just to see, and this is more of a weekend toy, or even maybe a daily driver in the summer, like, this makes so much more sense. It's just, it still sounds great. And you, like, if you get stuck in a summer storm, or if it's like a weird cold snap in the fall, and not snowing, but it's like down around the freezing mark, you got a little more reassurance. So it's the one I think I'd get, because I don't track regularly. I guess if I could afford this, I could afford to go to the track more. So that's
it's well, I'm gonna use the 911 comparison again, of like, as great as the GT3 is, like, I don't really see the point in getting a high-strung, naturally aspirated engine if you're not tracking regularly. Whereas a GTS, and especially the comparison works now with the GTS being a hybrid, is like, that's the more all-round daily driver friendly one. And so this, I don't know, I'm jealous. This seems like a really wicked. It's a supercar again. That's what GM does so well with the Corvette.
It's the Porsche 911 is the perfect. You're right. That's perfect. Like, the CR1's the turbo, which everyone wants to own that, but it's expensive and crazy. And then you have your Carreras, which is the regular vet. But this is the GTS. This is the one I'd buy. A GTS 4 is exactly the 911 I'd get. I mean, I don't need the GT3, as cool as it'd be. It'd just be like every day living with it. And so this is there we go. It's the GTS of Corvettes. So moving on to a completely different. Oh, my top comes off because it's a Targa, so it kind of transitions to this car.
There you go. So I drove the 2025 BMW Z4 M40i Handschalter edition. It finally has a manual after 6 years. I definitely don't think
it can hook up to a manual. Interesting. I didn't think that would ever happen somewhere.
Yeah, I definitely didn't think that BMW saw a sister car do the same thing and think, wait a minute, everyone loves that. We should probably do the same thing. Jokes aside, now that I've finally driven both the Supra and this, they are very different. Not just because one is a convertible and one is a coupe.
It's the badges.
The shifters are different.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So that was the surprising thing is I really like the Supra's shifter because it's very mechanical. It requires a good amount of effort through the gears. It's slightly notchy, but I like that. Whereas this is very smooth. And I don't really love BMW manuals. I drove the M2 last year, and it was hard to judge and hard to really gel with. This immediately, I was having a lot of fun with it, and it's a little lower effort than a Supra, but I think that works because the Z4 is just a little more relaxed. It's kind of this is the sharpest the Z4 has been because there have been some suspension tweaks, but really it feels better suited as kind of a mini GT. Like it's not a hard edge sports car. And so the manual fits that personality really well. It's really good. Like it's the best driving BMW that you can buy new. But I don't really know what that means. Does that make sense?
So, do you know like the transmission specs enough? Because like BMW makes so few manuals. Like, because there's this in the Supra, obviously, and then there's the M2 and I guess the M3 and M4.
Yeah.
So is that? I wonder if it's all the same 6-speed, just tuned different, or if they have different ones for the different cars. I don't know.
There are unique pieces in this one. It's the same basic 6-speed manual unit, but there have been some changes specifically for this application. And it picks up other things too, like the M cars. Like this has staggered wheels. It's 19s on the front and 20s on the back, and no other Z4 has done that.
Just like the Corvette.
Yeah. See, they're basically the same. On that note, this is priced like a Corvette too, not the E-Ray, but
it's $130,000. Wow.
It's priced right up against a Stingray now, and that's a tough thing.
Smell a comparison.
That's a tough
Stingray
thing.
convertible against that Z4. Let's go.
Yeah, and similarly, like I said, it's a mini GT, so it's more involving and engaging because you have a 6-speed manual. But if you're really looking for pure driver enjoyment in this segment, you're just going for a Boxster. That just makes sense. But the Boxster that you'd be getting for this price is the base 4-cylinder. So it's stuck. This is right between the V8 quick but auto only Stingray and then the more engaging but slower Boxster. I mean, I say slower, it's actually probably just as quick to 60 because it's lighter. But I like this. It's very good. It took BMW 6 years to do it, and I'm not sure buyers really care. I don't know. I feel like this is made for journalists. Like, oh my god, it's a manual. It's so good. But are Z4 buyers clamoring for a manual?
I wonder if it's for just BMW fanatics that want a manual and they don't want an M car. Although this is even less practical, so I don't know.
It's going to be a future classic or a future collectible, I'm sure, because it's not going to last for... The Z4 is already 6 years old. It's not going to be around for much longer.
All right.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, will the WRX be around much longer? This headline in this story actually kind of caught me off guard because the STI dying and all that, I know that was more regulations based than the actual car, but it always sold smaller numbers. But the WRX has been selling healthy since not this generation, last generation, when they went to the auto manual sedan only choices. Actually, what? Yeah, that's two. I can't remember. But their sales went way up because they hit the formula people wanted. It was like almost like a poor man's A4 or 3 series because you had the same sort of power and you could get manual auto and it was all-wheel drive. And then there's also the rally version with the manual. And then this one with the STA not going, I mean, I've been critical of the look since day one, and I don't think I'll ever stop being until it's gone. But it drives like a WRX, and it has that same feel. And it's in our recent comparison, we said it's actually even a little nicer now. I don't know if this category has gone away. I mean, it's a sedan, and we know sedans are dying because it's not like there's new cars that are stealing its thunder. If anything, it's more on its own than it ever was. So I don't know. There's no all-wheel drive like sporty turbo sedans at its price point.
Can I make a ridiculous comparison here? Is it a Viper problem where it's like everyone who wanted one already owns one?
Maybe, but there was so many that wanted them, like they
Yeah.
wear out. And I always joke, like, a lot of the people who are enthusiasts for Subarus, they'll never have and never will buy a new one. They want to be the third owner that then modifies it beyond
Yeah.
its life. Um,
Hmm.
but I think people releasing these as the exact sort of thing I said, but I don't know. I mean, like, yeah, there's the Elantra N, which outperforms at similar price, but it doesn't have the all-wheel drive. So in a lot of regions and it's way, way like more hardcore than
Well,
this.
I was gonna say I never thought I'd say this about a WRX, but like comparing it to the Elantra N, the Elantra's the hooligan. Like this seems
Yeah.
mature and sedate in comparison.
I mean, it could just be a blip, but the sales are down almost a third since for this year compared to last year. That's
Yeah.
a big chunk, and they've brought out 2 different enthusiast versions this year, which weren't going to sell huge numbers, but you think that would at least get some interest in it. But I really do wonder if this wasn't the WRX people wanted when they made it. They kind of made it a little more sophisticated. They gave it SUV like styling. Like, I don't know. I hope it has another chance. Like they make another new one and they kind of correct some of the issues.
Yeah. Well,
I also think going up 2 horsepower with a bigger engine, I get it. Like in real world, it's way more usable, but a lot of people buy stuff on specs and it didn't sound that cool. So,
well, maybe give it a year or two, and when the facelift happens, maybe Subaru will get rid of all the cladding, and then people will respond in kind. I don't know.
and get that 2.4 up to like at least 290. Like that's just a good number to be at.
Yeah, yeah. Oh,
Speaking of big things, so the Ford Expedition is still a thing, and it looks very different because it's all new. And it looks like an F-150 in the front. I mean, I know it's all new in
yeah,
relative sense.
yeah. It's the same platform, as far as I can tell. Yeah,
I don't
still
even know when that
enormous.
platform changed. Yeah, but you know what? The F-150 front end looks way better on it.
Yeah, yeah. So the front end is good. It was described to us at the event as they wanted it to look like a strong man lifting barbells, which is
What?
not what I get from it. I see with all the lights on, like in the picture here, it looks like 2 apostrophes joined by a little light bar at the bottom. Um, it's enormous, and that's the thing is like in profile it looks the same because you can't really change the shape of a giant SUV, but the front is different. The back is very different. I don't know if you've seen any of the photos, but the entire most of the liftgate is now a big contrasting black piece below the window, and it's because there's now a split tailgate.
Oh.
That's the big change, and so the Ford wants to highlight that by making the contrast piece. It's kind of like the Jag XJ years ago when they did the strange C pillar, and they're like, "Oh, we want to highlight that, so we've made it black." Um, it's that, and so it opens as a split gate. There's a configurable cargo management thing that actually can double as a backrest, so they want people to be able to sit back there. There's adjustable lighting to make sure that it's all being sold as more of an active family vehicle. I don't know who's taking an Expedition off road and camping out of it regularly, but
I mean, yeah, I could see to a degree, like if you're going a little, like not hardcore off road, just a little,
yeah,
but
yeah, that's what I mean. Like just cottage
use an
road.
F1. You use an F-150.
Yeah,
This really is. They're trying to sell it like a pickup truck.
yeah,
SUV. They got the F-150 look-alike front. It's got a split tailgate. It's funny about the tailgate thing because Toyota, is Toyota that just did that too? Who else just made a split
I mean,
tailgate?
Lincoln just did a split tailgate, and it's the Navigator. So
What's
I
the
mean,
same
of course, that was going to
No,
happen.
I was in one and I said, "Oh, no!" I said it looks like a mini Land Rover, and the back end opens like a Land Rover. And never really, I can't remember who it was now. It's gonna bug me, but it's funny how things come in cycles of style. Like everything was split back in the day. And they're like, "Oh no,
Yeah,
people want one piece." So then everything opened like a door, and like, "Oh, this is too wide." People wanted to swing up, like a hatch always did, and now it's like split tailgates coming back.
see, and my big issue with split tailgates is if that folds down, then it's harder for me to get stuff out of the trunk because it's now a further reach. Like that's my thing. But I mean, I should probably talk about other parts of the Expedition. The third row is unique in the class because it is a 40-20-40 split. So you can fold down the middle section and put huge items in, which I think is very clever. Good on Ford for that. And then, of course, the massive tech upgrade. It kind of looks like Nautilus a little bit. It's a 2-foot ultra wide screen that's set at the base of the windshield in front of the driver instead of a head-up display. And so you can use the central touchscreen, which is a big landscape-based one, and you can put different sections of information on the screen that's at the base of the windshield. And then the steering wheel is kind of squirkly in shape. So big, massive tech upgrade, and there's Google Play integration, and there's games and movie watching if you're in park. There's a power sliding center console. And Ford is finally realizing that people don't need tablets in their vehicle, because every family that's buying one of these undoubtedly has at least a tablet or two that the kids just take anyway. And so it's just a clamp that adjusts in size. So you can put a smartphone on the back of the front row headrest, or you can put a tablet, like it adjusts, and you just clamp it on there. So that's smart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So we're getting towards the end of our news.
Yes.
The Mercedes AMG 1 has absolutely destroyed the speed record at the Nürburgring.
629.
Yeah. And there's a video you can watch of it. And I mean, like, we're getting to, these are race cars with like headlights.
Yeah.
But I just had to put the story in. Just, I mean, that number is insane. Like, again, how you're saying 10, 20 years ago with the Corvette. If you said, 20 years ago, production car is going to do under 630 on the Nürburgring, people would be like, yeah, sure it will.
Okay.
Like, race cars really did that. But the reason I did this is I can't not put a story in whenever the AMG 1 comes up, because I want cars to go back to this. And I love that Mercedes has this car, because this looks like those 90s Le Mans GT1, or not GT1, the I can't remember what the group was called, but like the CLK GTR and the 911 GT1, where they took a stock car and just stretched it out for Le Mans.
Yeah, wasn't it? It must have been GT1 for like a year or two, right? Because there was the Toyota GT1, there was the
I guess it was
911.
GT1, because GT2 was the Vipers and the because McLaren was a GT1, and then everyone made these one-offs and started to beat it because it was dominant. So then McLaren went to GT2 without the long tail.
The famous Toyota GT1 thing where it was like, oh no, we have to sell the one road car. The gas tank is the cargo hold. I don't know what the problem is. That's where you put suitcases.
Yeah, I don't, because Porsche made a couple more GT1, 911 GT1s, but there weren't many. Remember, Nissan did one with the R390 road car. It was like the one off, but it was just cool because they had to make them, and this looks so much like those. Looks like a complete 20-30 year later successor to the CLK GTR. So
yeah,
this is what I envisioned hypercars to be when they brought the class back, not basically prototypes that are slightly different. Like, they don't look like cars. That was the whole thing. Like, hypercars going to look like road cars. Like, no, they don't.
I think the Aston Martin, the Valkyrie is kind of more like what you're saying. Like that looks more like a prototype. I know it's a road car. This still looks like a road car, just a very extreme one. The Valkyrie is just a race car with a number plate.
Well, same with the Ferrari and the Toyota, and is Cadillac's back in there. Like, they all have the big fin sails down the middle, and it's like, yeah, those aren't. Anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Our rant for another time. Finish up with our last story. You drove something pretty cool.
Yeah, so this was a while back when I did the Toyota Kanreki in Canada, which is for people who didn't listen to a previous episode. First, go listen to previous episodes of the podcast. But secondly, Kanreki is the 60th birthday, and in Japanese culture, that is significant because you have gone through the entire lunar calendar cycle. So you're back at the beginning, and it's kind of a rebirth. So Toyota did this big, cool cross-country event, and I was at the kickoff, leg 1 in Newfoundland, and one of the dealers, in fact, the largest dealer network in the province, they own a pristine 79 Cressida. And it was a very cool experience to drive a 45-year-old car and realize that it's, in a lot of ways, just like a regular modern car. It's almost exactly the same dimensions as a current Corolla sedan. That was a shock that I only realized after the fact. It's within an inch or two in every dimension. 2.6 liter inline six. That is
powering the right wheels.
Powering the right wheels. It's fuel injected. It's only like 115 horsepower when it was new. but that's enough because this thing also weighs something like 26 or 2,700 pounds. So it's light, it keeps up with traffic, and the ride is so smooth and comfortable because it's not a modern car. So you're not riding on enormous wheels. The only thing that really lets it down is that the brakes are not good. We started losing braking power just heading down Signal Hill. The steering is great too because it's power steering, but it has a good amount of feel and you understand what the car's doing. But the steering wheel is like Twizzler thin. It's just this super tiny bit of wood and it's huge, and so it's just fun to
That's very
wind around.
70s.
Yeah. Well, especially the
Does it have
interior.
does it have the finger molds all the way around?
Yeah, the whole way around.
Yeah, that's 70s.
Unfortunately, I can't share the glory for listeners of the podcast, but the interior is a cherry red velour. So very, very
Hold on,
70s.
hold on. You broke up for a second there. What was it?
Cherry red velour.
Ah, oh wow.
Yeah.
That's also 70s. So
Yeah.
two things about that. How you said it's surprisingly modern. Like, in my opinion, arguably the 60s, definitely by 70s, cars haven't changed much in the general shape and what we do. I mean, in the 30s, 40s, 50s, we had like those crazy fenders and you weren't using space. But when things started getting a little more boxy and using up all the space within the wheelbase, which 60s, I mean, we got a little crazy with the hoods and the trunks, but yeah, like this, they've just gotten rounder. But the other one is my uncle had a 86 or an 88 Cressida that I got to drive. It was, 15 years old by then, but I got to drive when I first got my license, and it had a cousin of the Mark III Supra's engine, the 3-liter, but without turbos or anything. And I just remember like having driven not that many cars and a lot of like entry-level American cars, getting that, I was like, this is the smoothest thing I've ever driven. Like, it was so nice.
Yeah, it was a fun little experience, and it's also, I mean, this was the top of the Toyota lineup back in the 70s, right? So to draw parallels to this and the Crown sedan, it's like there is something there. It's cool just to see the DNA of a brand. It was a very fun experience.
They did have Crown back then. We just didn't get them.
True.
I'd argue this and then like the Cressida I drove were the precursors to Lexus. Those were like the Lexus of Toyota back then before they decided to make a whole new brand.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to take a very short break, then come back with the question of the week. And I'm actually pulling an audible and changing what I was going to do based on one of our stories. So we'll be back in a sec.
All right.
All right, we're back. Kyle has no idea what I'm going to say here, so I'm going to catch him off guard, and he might need a second to think. But after hearing about the expedition, looks like, a man lifting 2 barbells? Is that what you said?
A strong man lifting 2 barbells.
It made me think this week's question of the day has to be, what is the most ridiculous way you've heard a car described at a launch or by a manufacturer? Not someone themselves say it, but I mean, I have the easy go-to that has been ingrained in my mind for life, and that is the Bionic Cheetah.
The FX.
When Infiniti first brought out the FX, it wasn't like they mentioned it once. I think they even had a whole ad campaign about it being a Bionic Cheetah, and I guess kind of in the headlights I could see it, but yeah, that was interesting.
Oh man,
anything you can think of?
No, that's a very specific question. I would have needed to do some homework on that. I will say, so I very much liked the design language, and I think that this was a major reason that a certain brand is now so well regarded. But the tiger nose of Kia, when that kicked off, when Peter Schreier put that, I want to say, was it the Soul that started that design language? The first generation Soul? I don't know. It's been going for a long time, right? And now it's only just starting to be phased out for this current design language. It's still, I think they call it a tiger face now, or maybe it was the other way around. Either way, tiger something was a bit of a stretch. I never saw much of a tiger in it, but the important thing there was that it was giving Kia a more consistent design language.
Yeah, well, I mean, that was why they hired him, right?
Yeah, and so I think that would be my answer. But yeah, I don't have. I mean, the strongman thing is actually kind of that one alone is. I was just like, really, I don't see it. And also, I mean, that whole visual language with trucks and SUVs of like, we want to make it angry.
I'm trying to search it as we do this, and I can't. But I stumbled across vehicles with the worst receptions, and it starts in like the 40s. But let me just go to more modern and see what some of the recent. It's a whole Wikipedia page, so this is like some people's gone through.
So I have one on that actually.
I hold on.
Okay,
I feel bad about
first.
I just went to like the newest one,
Mhm.
and the most recent entry is the VF8.
Why? I mean, reception. So in terms of overall reception, yeah, but I think styling wise, the VF8 is.
No, it's like the worst reception. Like a new car was launched, and everyone was like,
yes, yeah. So one that I want to point out, then I know this is going a bit on a tangent versus the original question of the week, but I have to point it out is there was what was Aston Martin's sort of other brand? It's spin-off, it's sub-brand or whatever. Nuts. Now I'm forgetting it on the spot. Anyway, there was a Aston Martin concept about 10 or 15 years ago, and it was supposed to bring back Lagonda. And it was the Lagonda concept. And it was an SUV, and it was so poorly received when they took the covers off at the show that the next day they covered it up and removed it from the show. And I think that has always stuck in my mind as a great example of just not reading the room.
I'll read you some of these in a sec, but that just reminds me, the only thing that beats that is the LA Auto Show over a decade ago. Do you remember the Puma?
The Ubian or
Ubian Puma. And it was just sitting in front of the show. Like it wasn't actually, it was in the hallway, but it was uncovered when all the media came, and we were all like, what the hell is this? And people panned it because deserving it deserved it all, I guess.
Yeah.
I was trying to think. I was trying to find like an aspect that was cool. I mean, it's cool. I had off-road tires, but the guy started suing people that panned it. He started going after the publications and social media and stuff because he thought it was great. And it was the Homer car. It was the Homer car brought to life. Someone had this crazy idea and thought they had such a good idea.
Homer, you
anyway,
me.
So we'll go back 2 decades quickly on what they've decided as the most worst. Well, maybe go back further. So after VinFast, it's the Karma. I don't disagree with the Fisker Karma at all.
Oh, I thought it looked great.
Yeah, but it wasn't a good car. This is about a car that just people drove and they're like, for the price especially. The Mirage, the most recent Mirage.
Yeah.
Moreno Cross Cabriolet.
Yeah, but it's a collector item now.
On your Aston Martin topic, Signet.
Also a collector car now.
The Scion IQ that you got for free if you bought a different model. I was like, here's another car. We need to make cafe. Here, take this one too.
Yeah.
Juke, I don't agree with Juke. Oh, the Nitro. Yes, the Nitro.
Oh, the Nitro.
I remember it looked so cool. Oh, and then Caliber before. Both of those were like, oh, this is a cool idea. And the Nitro looked cool. And then I drove both. The Caliber, I think, is still single-handedly responsible for a lot of America's distaste of CVTs. It was so bad in that vehicle.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we should wrap this up because we have a lot still to get to with our special guest and our F1 feature. So we will be back. I will be talking to Nissan about the most recent kicks that I talked about last week as well. And then Colin will be back to talk about what's next. All right. Welcome back. We are ready to talk to our special guest this week. If you could just introduce yourself and what you do.
Hi, good afternoon or good morning. My name is Peter Bedrosian. I work at Nissan, and I work in the product planning department. I plan future products for the company.
That's sounds like an interesting job. You always get to know what's coming or maybe what's not coming, depending on the vehicle.
Both actually.
Yeah. So that's perfect for the first question because it would have been you that probably saw this first. Is what was the Kicks has a lot of updates. It's a whole new vehicle. What was the one thing customers wanted the most?
So our first gen was very well accepted especially with our young buyers, very affordable vehicle, good value, easy to drive, fuel efficient. When we went out and talked to customers about how we can improve this concept for the second generation. A couple of things came up. One was for customers in the Northeast, especially Midwest, they really wanted all-wheel drive, and they felt like for a product to be considered a SUV crossover, it needed all-wheel drive. So that was high on our list in terms of a need, was all-wheel drive. We want to provide that versatility, drivability, and also, the segment has a lot of young buyers. And while many experienced buyers can probably get away with the front-wheel drive in the snow, Northeast, I used to drive a very non-snow friendly vehicle in my younger days. But if you're experienced, that's okay. But if you're not an experienced driver, they really wanted that confidence of the all-wheel drive. So that was number one. The second one was really provide more room for their cargo and their actually passengers. So they had a lot of friends in the vehicle. They want to take road trips. They just wanted more roominess in the vehicle. And then really the third was they wanted to look cool. So that always comes up.
Yeah,
so those were the key highlights.
Yeah, there's a lot more space. Like, I was surprised that I could sit behind myself in the rear seat quite easily. Not all vehicles in that class, even some bigger ones, can do that. So I'm actually going to jump ahead one question because you just kind of brought it up, the styling. So
yeah,
the old Kicks had very familiar sort of SUV Nissan styling. The Kicks still has some elements, but it's a lot more unique. Was that something you wanted to do with this for the youthful buyers?
We did. That was really a concerted effort on our side. Look, people knew that they were getting into an entry segment, but they didn't want to feel like they were downgrading in terms of content or the styling. They didn't want to look like they entered a entry segment, and they wanted a product that really stood out in the marketplace. And they felt some designs were getting too familiar and not distinguishable. So they wanted something that stood out, and they want to be proud of what they purchased. So we put a lot of emphasis on the design, really make it youthful, kind of fun, but also a very strong character, especially with the front end design. You can see a lot more design volume and strength in the front end design. And that's what the customers really wanted. They really want to stand out in the sea of other products. And you can still see in our design, in the front end, you can see our V-shaped sort of design, character in the grille design. Ken Lee was our chief designer on this on the NML side. He did a great job with trying to bring some youthfulness. There's a lot of elements of sneaker culture in the design as well, in terms of the colorfulness of the vehicle, but also some of the details in the lower part of the sill where you see the texture, this pattern on the bottom that mimics sort of a sole of a shoe. So there's a lot of inspiration from sneaker and urban culture.
Yeah. When I was reviewing it, I kind of likened that the styling wasn't quite as wild as the Juke was when it came out, but it was not as conservative as the last Kick. So you've kind of found the middle ground in between there.
Yeah.
And I think it will be distinct. And for now, I was getting people looking at me when I was driving around. I had one of the two tones, which I think always helps. A little visual. All right. So that kind of takes me to my next question. Do you think the new Kicks will have the same general demographics as the old one, or are you going after like trying to obtain your current customers but going after another segment?
No, we're keeping our customer base. We're evolving with the customer base, right? It's customers that are in their mid-20s to early 30s, maybe getting into that married stage, but not quite there, maybe engaged. So still going after that buyer for sure, but we're finding that their needs are growing. They're having to make a lot of key decisions in their life as they're getting into the stage, right? They're really trying to prioritize spending money on the things that they need. And so that enables them to do things that they want. So they're very focused really on the things that they purchase, buy, and want to own. So we kind of evolved with them. They were looking for something more versatile that can fit, a variety of driving scenes or being able to carry people. They tended to be sort of the center of the social circle within their group. So they were very active, whether they were active in the community, they were having things in the vehicle, people in the vehicle. So they were asking for more out of their product, and I think that's what we brought with this next gen kicks.
Yeah, it is more of a all-around vehicle. It's pretty impressive, the gains inside for it not being that much bigger outside. Just, I guess, better use of space, and it's just an inch or two here and there really makes a difference. Up here in Canada, I know what the answer to this would be, but what do you expect the split to be between front-wheel drive and all-wheel drive in terms of sales?
In the US, at least, we're expecting to be about half and half.
Okay.
Slightly more on the all-wheel drive side, we believe, maybe closer to 52, 55% all-wheel drive. Again, we're expecting a lot of growth from the Northeast states, and of course Canada as well. So Canada is very excited that the Kicks has all-wheel drive for the first time. So they're super excited and happy about this.
Yeah, because I mean, where I live, we don't get a ton of snow, and I see a lot of Kicks. I mean, you were saying earlier about driving winter cars. I still drive terrible choices for winter cars that go between Miatas and Genesis Coupes and RX-8s and all sorts of things like that, because I don't have to go anywhere if it's a huge storm. But yeah, like where I live, front-wheel drive's fine with winter tires, but all-wheel drive is a lot more reassuring. And like my parents, who aren't huge drivers, I mean, they drive a lot, but they're not car people. They got their first all-wheel drive vehicle about 10 years ago, and they couldn't believe the difference with winter tires and all-wheel drive. So it's
that combination. That combo you mentioned is the killer. It's just, if you get snow tires on all-wheel drive, it's phenomenal how much tires make a difference, right? Mm-hmm. I think many people can really do well with just snow tires on a front drive vehicle. I think they can outdo some of the four-wheel drive vehicles, but having both is just a great way to get through winter.
Yeah, oh, for sure. And it's also, I think, even if you're not using it, it's just the sort of confidence it gives you in the back of your mind that, oh, I'll be okay. I mean, there's a lot of other systems that are probably helping you out more, but it is a selling feature for a lot of vehicles now.
Yeah.
So this last question is just sort of from me, because I'm such a car person. Was there ever any thought of making a performance version of the Kicks? Not like a full Nismo, something crazy, but maybe a little more power, a little more handling base, lower to the ground, something like that?
Yeah, we were always thinking about that. I mean, I've spent a lot of years at Nissan, and some of the key products I worked on were the GTR and the Z, many years back when we launched those products. So I'm always thinking about performance in the background. For this customer, I think variations are super interesting. And I think SR with the 19-inch wheels, two-tone, kind of get to that a little bit, especially with the sport seats. I think it's a great place to spend time. It'd be nice to have something in the middle. We're always looking at different versions, but nothing at the moment that we can commit to.
I love the Juke Nismo, both of them, the RS and the regular, but I know they weren't exactly huge sellers, but that's how it always is, right? There's few of us that want to buy those, but we just wish.
Well, for the enthusiasts, they were great, right? With especially the RS with the Recaro seats that were just phenomenal. I really enjoyed driving that car. Yeah,
I remember taking one out, not the RS, the regular with the auto and the all-wheel drive in a snowstorm that had winter tires, because up here they're putting on all their press cars, and with the torque vectoring, I couldn't believe how you couldn't get it out of shape. It just would turn and go. So I always thought about getting one, but it was just a little too small for my
it is small, right? Yeah. This one, we're using a all new platform for this next generation. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the improvements in the product came from this new platform. So it wasn't just taking the old Kicks and adding all-wheel drive or making it wider. We started with a brand new platform. So it's our CMFB platform. It's just an internal code, but it's a global platform. And we use a variation of this for the Juke in Europe. So it's a similar platform. And it brings, better driving dynamics. It brought us better space. It brought us the all-wheel drive. So it had a lot of enhancements. We upgraded the 1.6 liter to the 2 liter. So it has a lot more torque and horsepower. And we do have a new transmission that comes with it that really keeps our fuel efficiency, even though the vehicle got bigger, more performance, and of course more regulatory tech and structure is in the vehicle. Even with that, we're able to maintain the fuel efficiency of the vehicle, which is remarkable.
Yeah.
And that's a modern platform, what it can do for you.
Those numbers are pretty good. Like you said, for the power increase in the size. I'm glad you brought up the driving dynamics, because that was probably for me the biggest difference. Like, I knew it'd be bigger and I knew it looked different, but it has gone up in ride height, yet it's I don't know if it handles better, but it feels like it does from the seat. It's like it's more engaging than not just the old kicks, than a lot of vehicles in that class. So yeah, it's kind of fun to toss around, and they can also go over a curb here and there if you need to.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of work on the steering. If you want to get into the details, I think the front structure, suspension members, the stiffness went up quite a bit. That gives you that reassurance and confidence when you turn in that the vehicle does exactly what you ask of it. Especially for this class, it's actually quite good in terms of steering accuracy, on center field, those kinds of things. You and I will notice that, but for the customers that we were focusing on, a lot of younger buyers, inexperienced, we just want to build their confidence level in driving. So as the vehicle dynamically responds to intuitively to where they want to drive, it really adds confidence and to their skill level. And but they don't know what's going on in the background. They just feel it. They know it's working as intended, as it should. And again, the all-wheel drive and the suspension, the tuning, and the ground clearance, especially for your market as well, because you do in certain parts, you do get quite a bit of snow.
Mm-hmm.
And we have an 8.4-inch ground clearance, which is the segment leading sort of ground clearance. So that was also for snow driving, or maybe doing a little bit of off pavement driving, but it was also to give that sort of SUV presence and stance, and so that was really important. Kind of functional and also a visual, but it didn't impact the driving dynamics.
No, yeah, it's quite good. Like you said, there's nothing that's really that tall, that small, and even if you go to the next class up, it's like the Jeep and the Subaru are, I think, the only things that are above it. And I always kind of feel like 8 inches is sort of where you get into the real SUV. Okay, I can like go on a nice dirt trail, or if it snows, I'm not too worried. Just one last question before I let you go. I just thought of this as you're talking. The actual steering wheel, is that an all new steering wheel, or is that borrowed from somewhere? Because I don't remember it, and I really like the feel. It's like a little thinner and a little smaller. I really like how it is.
Well, it's new to Kicks, but it comes from our other product lines. Like the Rogue has that.
Oh, really?
Has that steering wheel. We actually borrowed a lot from Rogue. I don't want to sideline, but we have all-wheel drive, but the all-wheel drive system is from the Rogue, so it's a more compact unit, electromechanical, so it reacts to slip a lot quicker than the all-wheel drive system we had in our Rogue Sport previously. Again, going back to this driving confidence, I think when people feel slip, they get a little nervous, right, in the snow. And I've been in that situation because I've driven some of the cars that you mentioned in snow as well. And the system reacts so quickly that you don't even detect that actually the vehicle is slipping. So again, just adding to that comfort. But again, we borrowed a few things from Rogue, which is remarkable for a product in this category.
Yeah, I haven't driven the Rogue actually in about 2 years, and we have it in 2 weeks. We're doing a comparison with a refresh, so I'll have to, I'll reacquaint myself with that wheel. Well, I thank you so much for coming on. You gave us a lot of good insight. We will, I'm sure, be talking to you again down the road. I personally look forward to getting a Kicks here and putting it in some sort of comparison, or trying it in the winter, because an hour behind the wheel is never enough. So thank you very much, and we will hopefully talk to you later.
Yeah, thanks so much. Appreciate the time.
Okay, well, that was very interesting. And now we're going to kind of shift gears over to motorsports. Colin Wood is back to talk F1 rumors. It's been a couple weeks since a race, but it doesn't seem to ever slow down in the world of Formula One.
It does not. Thanks for having me. Despite my physical disfigurement right now, for those who are watching on YouTube, I little fight with the surgeon. So
see how the other guy looks like.
Good stuff. We were again, before we got on here, goofing around with there's like a smoothing out feature, and it makes me look like an Instagram celebrity, or like I'm wearing 6 pounds of makeup or something. So it was pretty. I actually tried it out of my vanity, and it doesn't make the Band-Aid on my head go away. So the AI is not that sophisticated. It's the gist of it. So Yeah, there's wild stuff going on, and we were just talking about we're 2.5-ish weeks till we got another race, which is weird because I think the summer break was only a month, and now we have like a fall break too, apparently, all just so we can stretch this out till December.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe the first bit of news is that it's official that Alpine will not be using Renault engines in the future. So that's a pretty big step for them. I guess they don't trust their own engine folks, and they've shown they've had problems with it for a couple of years. And then I guess what isn't official is that they're going to use Mercedes engines. That's just the rumor. So
well, they got a choice of 3, and only one team uses the quote unquote Hondas, which in 2 years they're going to be Hondas, but not those Hondas. It's so weird. But so I remember at the start of the year, Alpine came out and said flat out, we're down 10 to 20 horsepower in our competitors because we didn't develop right, and there's a lockout on development, so they can't touch it. So this is just logical. If you want to even be competitive next year, you're gonna have to grab someone else's engine. Doesn't mean Renault can't come back in 26, but I think they're done. I think they'll just source from now on.
Yeah, I think so too. This is a clear, like, if they were going to come back with their own engine in the near future, they would probably just carry on and try and like eke it out and work on their engineering chops. But just to cut and run, like, that indicates that it will be a long time, I think, before we see a Renault engine. So maybe they'll go back to actually being called Renault again. Who knows? Alpine always seems like such a weird name. Having been in France this summer, I could tell you, like, the number of Alpines I saw, I could count on one hand. So that's even in France, right? Like, they're not common anywhere.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's such an impractical little sports car. It's awesome, but it's like, how many Alpha 4Cs do you see? Same sort of thing.
Exactly. Yeah. Super cool.
Sorry, just gonna go completely off topic. Maybe they'll like rebrand it one of their other divisions.
Maybe.
I'm waiting for the Dacia F1 team.
Oh, there you go. Perfect.
Let's go.
Make it look like the Dacia Duster or something. So you never know, man. You never know.
Dusting the competition.
Yeah, instead of boo. And then instead of Audi, they'll actually just do Skoda or something, and we'll have like the
Seat. Do they still have that?
Yeah, got some Seat.
Really do.
Not? That's good. Yeah. Alonso will drive a Seat, and everyone will love it. Although
I know we're not doing the rumors, but I always loved watching Drive to Survive when Ricardo went to Renault. And you know how they all drive the cars of the manufacturer he's driving in, like a nice, like, done up hot hatch, like a Cooper or something. But everyone else is like showing up in Ferraris, McLarens, and here he is in his little hot hatch. And it's like, oh, that's gotta suck.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a bit more humbling, right?
Yeah. Anyway, on to what we're talking about. Yeah.
So the next rumor was that Sergio Perez was sort of tipped to retire, and that the announcement was going to be made at the Mexico GP, and all the rumors were flying, and I guess they were significant enough that Perez
stays there. So who's left now without a seat? It's been so confusing.
See, now you're putting me on the spot. I'm trying to think.
Not guys that are we assume are out of F1, like Zhou and Sargent's already gone and Ricardo's already gone. But
yeah, and didn't Bottas actually did sign with Audi, or no? I can never remember.
I'll go on the Google. I don't think he has officially, but everyone thinks he's going to. I think it's just Hulkenberg still.
Yeah,
Bierman and Ocon. Bierman and Ocon on Haas, and Williams has Albon and Sainz, which is still interesting. But like we said in another episode, there must be something going on there we don't know about. They do seem to be getting better. Alpine, they have Gasly and a rookie, I think, right?
See, now you're putting me on the spot. I'm gonna have to look through. Yeah, it's it is. It's.
I'm just searching here. Oh,
he's one of the F2 drivers. Right?
Jack Doohan or Doohan?
Jack Doohan, yeah.
And
isn't Jack Doohan an Australian?
Wow, they're taking over the sport.
They are. Yeah, he is. There's a ton of them. Well, I guess now we lost to Ricardo, so you never know.
But we gained a Doohan, and Piastri and Lawson. He's Australian too, right?
Maybe he's Kiwi. He might be New Zealand.
Oh, okay. Well, I apologize to Australians. I know how much Canadians hate being called Americans.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a step too far.
So I guess the only open seat is the one at stake / the one at stake / but we all think it's going to be Bottas because he doesn't sound like he's retiring. And then I think we finally have a driver lineup set.
Yeah, it'll be very soon. Very soon. Maybe some other shenanigans will happen, and then we'll get some more chaos for the year going into the regulations change. I'm sure. So things will change again before that happens.
Yeah, it's interesting because a lot of these guys have, especially the younger ones, have signed multi-year contracts like Antonelli and Behrman, but you have a terrible year this year. It's not hard for teams to say nope, you're cut.
No, and those rookie guys too. Like I'm sure they're relatively speaking peanuts, right? Like they're not making big bucks. So if you have to cancel one of those contracts, it's not a huge contract to cancel, right? You can swallow that and take that pain relatively easily if you really have to. I don't think anybody wants to, but
I mean, if it's someone that's having issues staying on track, probably crashing a car is more expensive than buying out their contracts. So.
Absolutely, right? If you're only paying them a small amount. There was it watching recently? It was a little bit of a documentary somewhere, and it was talking. They interviewed Claire Williams, and she was talking about how basically when she first started running Williams, they had the drivers were the drivers, and by the time she left, they basically weren't even paying them. She said at the end they were. The guys were paid drivers. The drivers were paying the team, which we've always heard about. But she basically said both of there was nobody. The team was being funded, and they weren't like the guys got nothing. Basically, even if you won a race, or if you got some points, they might give you a little bonus or whatever. But for the most part, there was nothing. Because when she started, I think they had a decent lineup. Like it's funny to look back at some of the races, and you were like, oh, Williams had I'm trying to think. There was Bottas was there at the same time as Barrichello when Barrichello was kind of leaving the thing, and you're like, well, a Bottas Barrichello lineup's a pretty solid lineup 10 years ago or 15 years ago. So that's not too bad.
Well, that's not the case next year for sure. I don't think Albon or Sainz are paying to be there. So
no, and that's why I think things have really changed. Their whole new ownership structure, et cetera. Like they really need a restart. And it looks like they're on track. And you were saying before about what's going on there. There's one of the rumors that's circulating is that that Sainz has something in his contract that basically could allow him to move up to Mercedes. So were Antonelli just to fall apart or something like that, then they could actually move him up there, and that's probably one of the reasons why. Not just why he went there. I mean, he went there because he had run out of options almost.
Yeah,
it was surprising that. Yeah, he did, and it was kind of a little surprising that Audi didn't take him, right? So it's a unique setup.
Yep. All right. Well, what else you got?
So maybe this is the most complicated piece of news, and I don't have all the facts, and we don't even know where this really leads. But I'll paint you a little story anyway. So with all the shenanigans going around Andretti trying to get into Formula One, recently. Michael Andretti, who really was the one running Andretti Global, he's stepping down as the CEO of that company. So he'll be more in the background. Somebody else is going to take over more of the role. So I don't know if that's a sign of changes, or maybe, if you want to go off on conspiracy theories, maybe this has something to do with some backdoor agreement that the FIA has agreed in the future that, we'll let Andretti join Formula One, but you guys have to make some concessions on your side, and Andretti can't be, Michael can't be a part of it. I don't know. That's just me spitballing. But the interesting piece about all this is that at the same time, the sort of Andretti company created a SPAC, which is a special purpose acquisition company, which is basically for mergers and to go public on stock exchanges. It's called Andretti Acquisition Corp 2, because apparently they did this once before. The unique thing about this is that there is a board, and on the board is Zach Brown of McLaren. So what that all means, who knows, right? There's something going on there, but presumably the whole purpose of this SPAC that they've created is to acquire a motorsports team or motorsports things, technologies, whatever. I don't know, but it also, I don't want to jump to conclusions. It doesn't have to be Formula One. We just keep talking about that, but it could be anything. And apparently the Andrettis and Zach Brown have a good long-standing relationship. Apparently they've even partnered on stuff in V8 supercars in Australia, stuff like that. So I I wish I had an answer, and I've been digging into even seeing if anybody else has any interesting theories. And there just seems to be a lot of, here are the facts, and nobody really seems to be able to explain what is going on here. So, maybe my theory is as good as anybody's. So,
Zach Brown, I'm pretty sure there's like 3 or 4 of him, that it's not just one person, because you'll see him at like an Indy race, and somehow he's also at the F1 race, and then he's on a board somewhere else doing something. And you're like, how's this guy get around so much? But
he is everywhere. Yeah,
sorry,
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say he's almost more Lawrence Stroll than Lawrence Stroll, right? Like he really is like he's doing amazing things with McLaren. He's brought on tons of sponsors and money, and like he's really doing a lot of stuff. And he's this sort of big figure as well. And so it's fine.
Yeah, I mean, we mentioned when Andretti got rejected the first time that he'd just go buy a team, and maybe they wouldn't let him, but maybe that's what he's setting up for. Maybe that's, like you said, a back end deal. Like you're not going to be a 11th team on the grid, but if you can set up a company to swallow up like Haas or Alpine or one of the teams that is looking to get out, well, not that they're looking to get out, but that take a buyout. But as you said, they could be looking to do more with supercars or super GT endurance racing. I mean, McLaren, it's unusual to have someone that's having so much success in F1 and Indy, because they're very different sports and cars as much as people think they're the same. So yeah, maybe they're like, hey, let's go dominate other places.
Yeah, and amazing to think about, like, in I'm sure you and I could both remember that, McLaren came out with the F1, and that was a big deal, and whatever it was, the 90s, and then nothing happened with the brand for forever. And then what was it? The MP412C came out, and that was like the start of this whole new McLaren era of, we're going to build road cars and lots of them, and all these different types, and compete legitimately with Ferrari and Lamborghini, and they totally are. And then they push all this money into racing, and this came kind of not out of nowhere, but they really just resurrected, and they've seem to be doing well at everything right now. So good for them.
And I mean, they've had obviously down points, and even in very recent memory, but they're one of those brands that seems willing to put the money and effort in to do well. I mean, everyone knows about the McLarens of the 80s and early 90s when they're partnered with Honda. And then, like you said, the F1, that thing dominated Le Mans until everyone kind of made special purpose cars to beat it. Like remember the 911 GT1 and the CLK GTR. And then, now they're back in F1 and Indy. So interesting times ahead. We'll see what happens.
Well, we need to keep, yapping about something for the other 2.5 weeks until Formula One returns. So, and it's Austin. I love that track. I love, it's always cool to have driven on a track that the Formula One guys have, right? Like you feel like you're a little connection to it. You're like, I've driven in Circuit of the Americas, and it's just a cool facility. And I love that it's sort of, it's F1 in America before F1 was cool in America, right? Like, before all the Drive to Survive and everything, it's where they went. And those guys sort of, now it would be easy to get an F1 race in America. I think almost anywhere, like any big city, you could, throw some money around and get it. And everyone will be like, cool, great, that's awesome. Vegas, Miami, no matter what. But like the guys who put together the Austin track and got F1 there, I'm sure worked very hard to get that. And the fans come. It's just a cool experience. So.
Well, I mean, they built that track too. Like, it wasn't this historic track sitting around. They built it for F1 and NASCAR and everyone to come, and they did, and it's been a success. But that's still one of the most accessible F1 races in terms of price and availability and everything. So we should probably have like an Auto Guide live podcast from the race one time.
Agreed. I think that's perfect. We'll just there you go.
Montreal's out. And Vegas is out. They're way too expensive.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well, maybe who knows? We'll just do Abu Dhabi. Apparently, Hungary is the cheapest race to go to. So it's not, not if you include flying all the way there, etc. But apparently, the tickets are the cheapest. So
it still might be compared to some in North America.
I bet you could. Yeah, you could probably fly there and get tickets for the price of going to Vegas. So and you don't have to buy. Or was it Miami and buy burgers for $300 or whatever it is?
Oh yeah. All right. Well, we are taking up a lot of the episode this week, which is fine. I'll have you back next week, and I'm sure that's going to happen again, and we'll have only a week and a bit left until racing starts again.
Yay!
All right, see you then. So this has been a pretty lengthy podcast, so we'll do this quick. So this week, I got to spend some time in my favorite car, the CT5V Blackwing, and it was an auto, and it was different. And I'm not going to talk at all about it because I still love it, but it was a very different experience than I remembered. And then I also went on a trip to drive the Subaru Solterra, which we've never driven. It's like the only one in that class we haven't driven.
Yeah.
And it's actually got some decent, significant updates for 2024, which feels like there was a 23, but there was. It's just
There was.
this year, I think they're finally going all in with it. So yeah,
Okay.
there's that. What about
That's
you, Kyle?
exciting. So I picked up a Porsche Cayenne SE hybrid a little later in the week, so I didn't get to drive it much before I went on another trip as well. I went to the other side of the continent to drive the 2025 Kia Carnival. I technically can talk about it because by the time this publishes, it will have been past embargo, but I'm not going to because I'd rather talk about it next week on the podcast. Because the hybrid is a big deal. Yeah, and I got one of Porsche Canada's hot sauces that it launched in not in collaboration, in the same time as this new Cayenne came out this year, or this heavily facelifted one. So I have a hot sauce waiting for me that I'm going to have to also maybe do a review on. Food reviews. Food guide.
Car reviews. Yeah, so then quickly next week, I am in the GMC Silverado EV, which I've been wanting to drive for a while. I wanted to get the work truck, but this is the RST, but I hope to get the work truck down the road. And I'm going to test out a new off-road tire. How about you, Kyle?
I'm driving a sibling to your vehicle. I'm driving the Honda Prologue, which I saw a headline recently that it might be the best-selling Ultium model in North America. So I'm very curious to drive it. I have had, let's say, a spotty history with the Ultiums this year. So yeah, I'm curious. And then actually, I think at the end of I travel in a little over a week, so I'm home. I get to actually spend the entire week with the Prologue.
And next week, I will be discussing my review of the Ultimate Ultium. So
yes, the Ultium. Oh, jeez. Yeah. All right. Well, that sounds like as good a place to end it as any, right?
Yeah. So this has been the Auto Guide Show. We will be back next week with lots more info that I hope you find interesting.
Have a good one, everyone.